Welcome to the very first official episode of the Celluvoid for the week of June 30th, 2020. Today, I'm joined by Taylor Dunne, who is an analog filmmaker, educator, and longtime mentor of mine. I met Taylor back in 2017, and she taught me 16mm and 8mm analog filmmaking at the New York State Summer School for the Arts. I don't think I'd be where I am and who I am, for that matter, if it wasn't for her brilliant teaching and how she exposed me to the amazing world of avant-garde cinema. Her practice explores the intersection of place, history, and landscape. Her films have screened at New York Film Festival, Tribeca Film Festival, and FOL, Experimental Film Society, in Istanbul. She's a programmer for Transient Visions and Festival of the Moving Image. Let's get started. Welcome to the first official episode. I thought it'd be really fun during these crazy times to just sit down and talk with like filmmakers and artists that I really admire, and you were one of them, so I thought you'd be a good first guest to just talk about your journey.
Sure. Well, I'm honored that you find me inspirational.
When did your interests in the arts really start for you? Like, were you a kid, like teenager? Like, when did like filmmaking become something in your life?
Well, I guess I've been interested in arts and crafts and just creative work for a long time, like since I can remember. Like when I was a kid, I liked to paint and draw and like make sculptures and build forts. But I was never very good at like painting and drawing. But my art teacher, when I was like 14 or 13 or something like that, he was part of like an experimental video collective and group in Buffalo, New York, which has like a long history of experimental film. And so he just happened to be like from that kind of obscure group of experimental filmmakers. And he showed me experimental video in my class in high school. And I thought it was really cool. I had no idea that such a thing existed. And I didn't have a video camera or anything. I couldn't afford one, but he let me borrow his, and I started making stop motion animation.
What kind of like camera was it? And what were you doing with the stop motions?
It was an S VHS camera, and it had a security camera function, so it would take like one frame every like 10 seconds. So I set it on that, and then would use clay and like kind of flexible material, and then like move it a little bit and then like step out. Luckily the camera had a little light on it, and it would like flash on every time it was taking like a video frame, so I used that. And what's crazy is it didn't have the viewfinder was broken, so I had to like
you were like guessing, kind of.
I was guessing, yeah. And then I would hook it up to this like little television that I had. Or I would bring it downstairs from my room and hook it up into the television that we had in our living room to make sure that the framing looked good. It was really, really crazy.
Were your parents like seeing you work on these little projects in the beginning? And like, were they supportive of it? Because I know like a lot of, I don't know, people like with their parents, like they're kind of not the most supportive with their kids in the arts, or luckily some parents are very supportive. So were you in an environment where you felt like comfortable to create art in your house?
Yeah, no, totally. They were very supportive. I mean, I grew up in the country, so it wasn't like I was in a town. I like wasn't hanging out with people, you know. I went to this terrible high school. People were mean, you know, it was really small. I was like the total weirdo. So I like didn't really have any friends or like not that many friends. And so, and my parents were divorced. So it was just my mom and my sisters. And I was making these things, and she was totally into it. My mom, like, really influenced, I think, some of my videos. Because the first one I made was about Bob Marley and like how he was like singing about love and peace, and then got like attacked by like Christian fundamentalists. So it was kind of like a, you know, I don't know. But anyway, she was totally into it because it was like, you know, I could be like, instead of being into making a video in my room, I could just be doing like lots of drugs or like getting into trouble or like, you know what I mean? Or just being really depressed. So she was really supportive.
Did you ever like show her like final products, like do mini screenings for her or like your siblings? Or I feel like I've seen some of your films, you've had your siblings in them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, with that one, I used that Bob Marley video to be able to get into a summer program so that I could study like video making, because they didn't have that at my school, and then I just kind of went from there. But I made a film that was like a classic like angsty teenage girl like hates cheerleader film. Like I made this anti cheerleader film. And my sisters helped me. They mostly helped me like carry my stuff around. And it was and yeah, and I showed them a little bit. Like I would show them at school, or sometimes there would be like a regional like student video festival that I would go to. But my art teacher was really supportive, and so were my parents. So, and here I am now. But,
So you bring up the video program. I'm assuming is you're talking about the New York State Summer School for the
yeah,
Arts.
yes, yep.
Do you want to talk about your time there and how that eventually kind of you kind of went full circle and started teaching there?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I applied for the New York State School for the Arts. I think I must have been 16. I think I did it. Maybe I did it the summer before I was a junior, and then the summer before I was a senior. I think I did it twice. That was just great because it was like going from this little like, you know, redneck like school in the country, and like just getting picked on, and like, you know, I don't know. I feel like it's the classic like art, you know, weirdo and
like escapism.
yeah, totally. And I went there and it was like, there are more of me, yay. And then you know, just made a lot of really good friends, and got to meet some really cool filmmakers. And like even at the time, I just was like, oh, these people are like neat, and like met all these like punk rock like female filmmakers like working on Super 8, and you know, like hearing their stories. And then like now as an adult, I realize like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I met you know, like I don't know, some of the people that I met were actually pretty famous, and it's like really amazing to me that they went like showed their work to these high school kids in this art program. And it was also really important for me because, you know, just economically, like there's no way that my parents could afford to send me to go to like a summer camp or to even pay to go to an art camp. But the New York State Summer School for the Arts, they will provide financial help for you if you can't afford it. And they did that for me. And that was just great. So it totally changed my world. And I think really prepared me for college. Oh, and then I ended up going back because I went for video, and that was fun.
So you bring up the video program. I'm assuming is you're talking about the New York State Summer School for the
yeah,
Arts.
yes, yep.
Do you want to talk about your time there and how that eventually kind of you kind of went full circle and started teaching there?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So applied for the New York State School for the Arts. I think I must have been 16. I think I did it. Maybe I did it the summer before I was a junior, and then the summer before I was a senior. I think I did it twice. That was just great because it was like going from this little like, you know, redneck like school in the country, and like just getting picked on, and like, you know, I don't know. I feel like it's the classic like art, weirdo and
Like escapism.
yeah, totally. And I went there and was like, there are more of me, yay! And then, you know, just made a lot of really good friends, and got to meet some really cool filmmakers. And like, even at the time, I just was like, oh, these people are like neat, and like met all these like punk rock, like female filmmakers, like working on Super 8, and like hearing their stories. And then like now as an adult, I realize like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I met like, I don't know, some of the people that I met were actually pretty famous, and it's like really amazing to me that they went, like, showed their work to these high school kids in this art program. And it was also really important for me because, just economically, like, there's no way that my parents could afford to send me to go to like a summer camp, or to even pay to go to an art camp. But the New York State Summer School for the Arts, like, they will provide financial help for you if you can't afford it. And they did that for me. And that was just great. So it totally changed my world, and I think really prepared me for college. And then I ended up going back because I went for video, and that was fun. But then I saw people working on 16 millimeter film, and I had no idea even what film was. I had worked in the dark room, like with analog photography, and really loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like analog photography, but moving. I just, I had never heard of. I didn't know the difference, and still
Yeah.
a lot of people know. And I was
Yeah.
blown away, so got me hooked.
Yeah. It's crazy how, I mean, seeing the evolution of this program today, how more kids are being introduced to this media of filmmaking. And I don't know, I guess a lot of kids were kind of geared towards video, but it's kind of like making a resurgence all of a sudden again. So
Yeah.
moving on from there, you said this with college and everything, you went to the new school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you particularly like your experience there, or
Well,
like, well,
yes and no. The new school, I don't know. I really wanted to go to school in New York City. Like, I love New York. Like, I would go and visit sometimes when I was in high school, and just loved it. And I think like the thing about the new school is it's uh more of like a continuing ed school, or like there's a lot of people who go to college who like took a few years after high school and then go, or maybe they transfer there. So it's not like a school that has like a big freshman culture, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
in hindsight, I think it was pretty challenging. I was really shy. I was like so shy. I So that was really hard, the first few years. I mean, I thought it was really interesting because the new school is like really interdisciplinary. So you can just kind of take like any class you want. You can build your own program. They just don't have like there are a set there are some set classes you have to take, but it's pretty open. And I think for someone like me who was a first generation college student, navigating a school like that and the city was, kind of hard. I definitely loved it, and I'm really proud of going there. I like think the new school's like amazing, especially now that I've had like some distance from it. I'm like, oh, like that school's pretty cool. But I was really shy, and I think I didn't really get my feet on the ground until I was like a junior, probably like the last 2 years. I went and studied abroad in the middle of my undergrad, and that just like changed me. Like, Like I studied abroad and came back and just like wasn't shy anymore, and then like had all this confidence.
Where did you end up traveling abroad to?
I went for I studied media studies at the University of Amsterdam.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
yeah. And that was great. Yeah, so I felt like after that I had like matured a little bit. But you know, you go to college at 18, you're like a little kid. I mean, plus like coming from a teeny town, like with my,
Yeah, that
you
yeah.
know, and first generation, you know, like it's kind of like I did it. I'm proud of myself, like trooper. But in hindsight, it's like, wow, that's crazy. But it was really cool, and I did like in the latter part of my time at the new school, I started taking film classes. I didn't start out that way. I actually started like out in there's a science, or there was, I don't know if there still is, there was a science writing program. Sounds crazy, but I loved biology. I loved anthropology. So I was like doing like genetics, anthropology, cultural studies, media studies, and then towards the end did more film. And then I didn't really do film like really seriously until grad school. So
Okay. So you weren't like entirely sure if like that was going to be your route, or were you thinking of combining science and film in a way?
yeah, well, I was actually really interested in combining anthropology and film, and kind of I was interested in like new kinds of ethnography, and using film for that purpose. But you know, when you're like, that's like real graduate school work, you know, like as an undergrad, I feel like I was like, I'm interested in this, but I didn't, you know, I took a real liberal arts approach, and I'm glad I did. I got to dabble in a lot. I think I also knew that if I wanted to work in the film industry, I didn't even have to go to school. Like I could just start. Like I had friends who were in the industry, and I just didn't, you know. And then I did that a little bit, but I kind of hated it, so wasn't interested. So,
Yeah. I guess, yeah, that is always a debate being brought up of whether film school is worth it or not, or at least being my first year being in film school, it's been interesting to see like people drop out of the program and like kind of switch their major or just like stop school completely. I don't know if there were people at the new school who were uh, or that you were like taking classes with that ended up doing that, or I just feel like that's kind of a college thing that happens when people realize maybe like college isn't necessarily their way to go, or like you were saying, like already having like connections and just relying on that.
I mean, I think like college is, you know, people go to college for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they go because they're like, okay, I want to go and like become more employable. I want to go, I want to learn. Other people go to college because they just want to get away from where they live. Maybe there's, you know, they want to, it's like an escape for them to get out of their circumstance. Um, and with the film, I mean, I think it is really important to go to school. And I mean, I teach in a film I teach in a film studies program. And sure, those students could go and, you know, join the industry and go squeak by. But I think that you learn to develop your own artistic voice in school. You are exposed to a lot of new ideas. You network, you meet people, and that's all really important. So I don't know. I think that's why it's a really good reason to go.
Yeah. And like once you started taking more film classes, did it start to become clear that eventually you would want to become an educator yourself and teach at universities with film and like cinema studies and other type of media classes? Or did that take like a while to like figure out? Because I feel like a lot of people who go the film route, um, it's kind of like they're split with the road of just kind of going straight into the industry or teaching or somehow trying to do both. So I guess like when did that click for you?
I never imagined I would be teaching film. That is like, to me, it still blows my mind. I'm like, how did this happen? I mean, I taught at the New York State Summer School for the Arts a few times, or was a TA at first, and that was really fun. But I still, even then, was like, oh, I'm not going to like go into teaching. But I only ended up doing that because at the grad school I went to, part of my appointment was that I would teach and then I could get a stipend and I got free tuition. So like it was a really good way to go to grad school for like a really low amount of money. And I started teaching and I liked it. I like it. I like it now. I'm not saying I don't like it. But I just started teaching and then you just kind of get sucked in, and I like to make my weird little movies that I'm not going to make any money off of, so it's kind of a way for me to do that. Although these days it's like such a challenge to find any time to work on your films when you get, deep into the teaching and service and all this other stuff. It's like you have to like fight for like 5 minutes to like work on a movie. But
yeah,
especially the
yeah,
time of COVID and online teaching, it's like, oh my gosh. But
right. Yeah, that's gonna lead me into my next segment about your current project, Off Country. I'm I'm really rooting for you to get this project like out into the world, but it seems like you've had like a lot of obstacles in your way of like you've moved a lot in recent years. I think you said you were going to film more this summer, and so I guess if you want to like talk about Off Country and your experience with this film and a little about the story of it and how it came to be.
Sure. So Off Country, I've been working on for a really long time. I, I guess I started it in 2014, maybe, just shooting. I mean, I didn't. Off Country is a film that looks at it looks at sites of nuclear weapons testing in the Southwest. So it looks at the Trinity test site in New Mexico, the a Nevada test site, also called the Nevada Security Site. And it also looks at Rocky Flats, where they actually made the plutonium triggers or plutonium pits for the nuclear weapons in the United States. They manufactured them there. It's right outside of Denver, actually, the site. It's a huge, super fun site. Now a park. How fun. You can jog amongst plutonium dust. Um, so I um, I know it's like funny, but that's actually how it got me going on this. But I started it just kind of shooting a little bit. I started working on it with my fiance, who I should have married, I think last weekend or the weekend before.
Oh no!
So,
Yeah.
oh. I know, darn COVID.
Damn COVID.
Yeah. But I was just finishing up as a grad student, and he kind of came into the grad program, and we met, and we just kind of started like traveling around, and we're kind of like interested in the nuclear weapons testing and these sites because they were like relatively close. So we just kind of started on it, and it's just something that we're shooting every chance we got, kind of over several years. So it wasn't like we were working on it like crazy. We just kind of would work on it every time we could, and just kept getting kind of deep into it. And we're shooting it on super 16 millimeter black and white, so it's expensive. So it's just been kind of like a shoot when we can. And we've decided now, like, I'm editing it. We both were researching and shooting. I'm editing. He's doing sound design. But we just decided that we're going to use what we have now and finish it with what we have and not shoot anymore, because I feel like it could just never end. So but yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess for me, I mean, I don't want to come up with excuses. Some of it is a little bit like, I don't know, like there's a lot of film. Like, well, recently I was like, oh, I know that we shot at this one location, but I like can't find the film. And I I think it wasn't transferred. So now I have to go through all of these cans of film and just look through them by hand and just try to find it, because it's just got to be a roll of film that like wasn't transferred, which is frustrating.
That's stressful.
I know.
And
It just bothers me. I'm like, I remember us filming this footage, but I don't know. I mean, all the stuff that I have scanned is all well organized. But
Oh, so you're doing the scanning yourself and everything. You're not sending it.
No, I'm sending it out. But
Okay.
there was just like a little roll of film. I don't know. I mean, it's just when you have a project that you shoot for like 5 years, it's like not as easy as having like a crew and having things organized and going out and being like, I'm going to get shot A, B, and C. Like this project, and the way that I tend to approach filmmaking is challenging during the post-production stage, because I see filmmaking as like kind of like a process of discovery. I gather all these things, and then I try to like thread some of these ideas together. So that's what I'm doing now, and it's kind of a hard, it's hard to it's like a big project, and it is hard to visually and narratively connect, find ways to connect things. So I'm working on it, but
right, yeah. And it looks like you've interviewed a lot of people for this, so I'm sure, especially with documentary, it's always tough to pick like what sound bites or information a person is saying is like necessarily what you want to go with, or what can be left on the cutting table. So I guess, is that what you're working on right now, is like sifting through interviews?
And still there's a lot of listening. I worked this last year transcribing a lot of interviews, but I need like I think my biggest issue with the film, and why like it's not done, or like even like in a really like even halfway done. I mean, I have a lot of work to do, is that it's hard for me to get my head in the space of it. Like, and I think this year, like, especially with having to go online in the middle of the semester, just mentally like destroyed me. And so many Zoom meetings, and like it took everything out of me. And I couldn't look at a screen. I couldn't, like, after doing all of that and then being like, okay, I'll work on the film, I was literally burned. I think my eyes were burned. Like I just couldn't do it. And that just, it then after that I had all this other kind of administrative stuff I had to do for my job, which required a lot of writing. And now I'm like, okay, good. I feel good. I've like given myself a break, and I'm getting back into it. So yeah, when that kind of stuff happens, I really enjoy working on like smaller projects, like shooting, or working on a, something by hand. So I'm kind of doing that too. So.
Oh, okay. So like little projects just for fun.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah. Definitely, yeah. The switch onto online, especially with being in film, especially for me, being my first year in film school, was so terrifying and confusing on how final theses were going to work and everything. I'm not sure how your college handled it and everything. A lot of people at the college I'm at, we had to film a lot of stuff at home, I guess, or come up with a new project entirely. Did like where you're teaching, like, did you guys have like an alternative plan for students, like writing a treatment or filming something in the confines of like your home?
Yep, we did we did a lot of those things. The most difficult class, I was teaching a 16mm class when we went online, and I felt like my students were just like getting the hang of it, like just getting ready to like, it's like not saying that
No.
but it's like when you watch like a little baby or a toddler like kind of stumble around, and then all of a sudden it can walk and like run across the floor. Like I felt like that's what was happening. happening with like we're working hard, we were figuring out the Bolex, and then we're just getting ready to like run with it, and we went online, and it just, you know, it was really tough. I mean, they made some projects, but it was like, I know that it just wasn't to their full. It couldn't be like fully realized. So that was hard. But I think some of the projects that my classes made were pretty successful considering the challenge of what we had to work with and the amount of time that we had to switch to online. So I'm proud of them. They, worked hard.
Going back to your work, I like how in your biography you describe your work as the intersection of place, history, and landscape. And you were talking a little earlier about growing up kind of like in like a rural countryside. Do you always know like that was kind of the work that you wanted to make, kind of centering around kind of like locations in your life or in other states and telling these kind of like miniature kind of portraits of people and the lives they're living in their towns? And
well, I think that part of my practice really comes from the influence that my great grandmother had on me when I was a kid. I was really close with her. She was the first girl born in what is now this ghost town in eastern New Mexico. So she was like a real tough lady who like lived through the Dust Bowl and stuff like out west. And she would just, I would spend time with her. And I mean, I was little. I was like, not even 10 or 11 or whatever, but I can remember her just telling me these stories. And to me, it was like the West was this really foreign, place. And so I just grew up listening to these stories. And that definitely had like a really profound impact on the kind of stories that I wanted to tell. And the connection to home and to place and to history. So, and to kind of like, I was really into tall tales. I still am, and like myths and like exaggerated stories I love. So, yeah, I'm still definitely still has a impact on the work that I do and the work that I want to make. I mean, I have like a lot of ideas for films, and I'm excited too to finish Off Country so that I can start working on other projects.
Do you want to like hint at or like talk a little about that, or do you want to keep it under wrap of future projects?
There was this like when I lived in southern Colorado for 2 years in the San Luis Valley. It's also called like the Mystical Valley. And when I was there, I've learned that it's hard for me sometimes to make a film about a place when I'm actually there. I like need distance from it and to think about it. And I want to make a film about that valley, and just like intertwining like some local history, legend, like all kinds of stuff. And it's also really beautiful. And I was going to shoot it actually this summer. I had a residency lined up there, but it got canceled. That's okay. So that's fine. It's probably better for me to just finish this other film. But yeah, I'm excited about that. I mean, stories about like the devil, like rolling into town and like at a dance, like dancing all night with these women at like a dance hall, and then like one of them like looked down and saw that he had like chicken feet, like things like that. So I'm trying to find a way to like make this kind of like, I guess, like magical realist film, but we'll see. It's not what I want to work next.
I guess like, do you have any filmmakers and or films that you've watched that have also influenced your work? Because you were talking about myths and tall tales. Is there any films kind of in that vein that have inspired you?
I really like. Let me know now. Every time somebody asks me this, I just go blank. Maybe not so much in like the mythology and stuff, but I love Chick Strand's films. I love like her kind of use of it's not oral history, but I like the way that she incorporates like, I don't know, conversation, dialogue, like very human kind of interaction.
Have you had any recent quarantine watches that have been like keeping you sane during these days?
No, I've been
Really?
the opposite. I feel like I watch what was kind of keeping me sane, especially well earlier in quarantine, was like just really garbagey, like rot your gut, television shows, like nothing serious, just because I needed a break. But there are some films I want to see that are like on that are kind of like lined up, and I'm like, I want to see that. Like I want to see that Spike Lee film that's on, I think it's on Netflix, called The Five Bloods, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
On my list. But I haven't really watched much. I've actually been like reading more, which has been great. And I don't know. I've just been like really tired by the time I go to bed, and I just go to sleep.
Yeah, these days just keep going by quicker and quicker, and yeah, I've felt tired myself these days.
I think it's also just part of this like screen burnout, where I just need to like, I can't even, it's like hard for me to watch movies. I miss going to the movies though so much. Yeah, I really miss it.
Is there any drive-ins going on in your area?
I think that there are, and I think that's so great. I love the drive-in. The drive-in was actually the closest form of entertainment to me growing up, so I like grew up going to them all the time during the summer. But I think there is, and I've been hearing that some of the drive-ins have been playing old movies. Like my sister saw the original Jurassic Park at the drive-in, and I was so jealous.
Oh.
But no, I should look into it because I really miss it. That's my preferred way. So,
do you have any favorite drive-in watches from when you were younger?
let me try to think. Well, I saw like, this is like, not
Or recently? It can be whatever.
Well, like I saw all the Harry Potter films at the drive-in.
Oh, no way.
But the problem is that some of them are really dark, and it was like really, the drive-in is like never as dark as like a movie theater, so that was interesting. What else did I see? I saw some of not the original Jurassic Park, but some of the other ones. What else? Oh, I saw The Shining at the drive-in on 35 millimeter. That was cool. So I don't know. And I love it when the drive-in was on film. I used to love it when the film would like melt, and so you'd see this big giant melted frame on the screen, and I would be like hooting and hollering and clapping, and everyone else was like mad and like beeping, and like the film had to stop. I was like, yay! But it's digital. At least the drive-in by my where I grew up. So
you said you've done like curation and like programming and that kind of thing, or worked with like projecting at theaters.
Yeah,
before?
I did. I did that when I graduated from the new school. I lived in New York City for a while before going to grad school, and I worked as a projectionist at this little one screen theater in the East Village called the Pioneer. I learned how to project 35 millimeter, and I also worked for a little bit at Anthology Film Archives as like their, I don't think I had a regular shift, but I would fill in for people and do things. And I worked like freelance. Like I would do a lot of like 16 millimeter screenings and stuff for museums and things like that. So yeah.
Is there like a lot of pressure, or like, I don't know, like what are like the do's and don'ts of, I guess, being a projectionist? Or I don't know. I'm assuming there's a lot of pressure on that of not messing up or like keeping
yeah.
everything synced.
No, totally. Well, now it's a lot easier because it's like if you're just using a DCP, it's like you press a few buttons, you know, and you keep an eye on it and hope that something doesn't go wrong. But I think like when you're, especially if you're projecting like a whole like program of like for a film festival and there's like multiple formats, like I've projected things where there was 35, 16, like mini DV tape for some reason, and then like DVDs and like all this stuff. And you have to just be really organized and you have to test things and make sure everything's right. And it's really stressful because it's so stressful when something goes wrong. It's like, oh my gosh, it can be really bad. I, yeah, I remember I was showing a print. I don't know. There's like crazy things, and especially with like film, you know, the projectors will be, you know, you have them regularly maintained, but sometimes things happen, sometimes something breaks, and you have to be able to fix it really quickly yourself. Um, you know, most of the time, so you have to just be good at like troubleshooting it. So,
Have you
yeah.
ever had like a situation where like something did end up going wrong and was it
Oh yeah.
even?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've had yeah, for sure. I mean, I like back, you know, I've had things where I felt like I could really save the day. Where like once one of the rollers on the projector just randomly like shot off, like I heard this thing shoot across the room,
Oh,
and
jeez.
I like looked on the floor and I saw it was a roller, and I could see the film loop on the projector like shrinking, like getting smaller and smaller, and was like, oh my god. And then I had like used my finger as like a roller, which is not a good archival practice. Very clean finger with like a little piece of this like microfiber stuff that you use to clean film. If any film archivist hears this, they're gonna like disown me. But
Oh no.
it wasn't for like an archival film, but whatever. Still, it was like for a theatrical film on 35. But still, I like did that and used my finger, and
So,
managed to like, you know, get to the end of the reel. But there are things, that,
wow.
you know. But I don't know. I've had things happen where like something broke, like a part of the optics on the lens, and you know there was nothing I could do. I had to stop the show. You know, like nothing. So sometimes, unfortunately, that didn't happen very often. But you know,
Yeah, I guess that is the big risk of analog is things possibly going wrong or just praying things will go smoothly. And I guess that really applies for production, um, just making sure you're going through the steps when shooting on 16 or 35. I guess like yeah, you could talk about that even like what was the process of like previous works you've done where I don't know, like if you ran into errors and how you were able to overcome that.
oh yeah, I mean, I guess like with anything, you know, you can make mistakes. Like if you're shooting on video or and then you don't do the settings right, that can be a real headache.
Mm.
You don't charge your battery, that can be a headache. I mean, with film it's more like sometimes things might get jammed, or you know you shoot and you realize that you had the variable shutter down so you didn't shoot anything. I mean, I definitely did that, like I've done that, but I think as you do it and you do it more regularly, you kind of like have like a mental checklist. One of the worst things I did, or one of the worst mistakes I made, which is really sad, is I set up this time to interview these people and like went out way out in the country and like, you know, filmed them, and like they were wearing costumes and all this stuff. And I was going to interview them, and then we didn't have any SD cards for the Zoom recorder.
Oh,
So I couldn't
yeah.
interview them. It was
Damn.
really tragic, and I just felt like such an amateur. It was so embarrassing. And that's like an unfinished project. Like I have the film, but I never like, you know, I just that's, you know, unfinished and sad. So
Would you ever want to try to finish it, or do you think it's kind of unsalvageable at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I could like, you know, I actually saw some of the footage the other day and was like, wow, this is like really pretty. I might be able to just totally make something totally different with it. Doesn't seem like a ways ago, but it is. So, yeah.
I guess I can wrap it up here. Because I have no more questions. But thank you for joining me and being the first guest to this. I'm still really new to this, so sorry if this was very rough, but it was really nice to just have a dialogue. I think it's good to like make time for these kind of discussions, and I don't know, like a little check-in kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't mind
Yeah.
being, your guinea pig. So, yeah.
All right. That concludes the first episode of the Celluvoid. I really hope you all enjoyed. If you want to check out more of Taylor's work, check out her website at taylordunne.com. And if you want exclusive behind-the-scenes footage of her upcoming feature film, follow her Instagram at offcountry. As for me, I just started up an Instagram, which you can follow at the Celluvoid, and a Facebook page, the Celluvoid. There I'll be sharing and curating additional content that will go along with the people I interview, but also other film-related posts. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.